I found my mother shivering, leaning against the cold brick wall of a gas station. Her eyes glassy and dilated from medication she clearly hadn't taken willingly. At 85, she barely recognized me. The security footage said it. A woman from our neighborhood's HOA had forced her out of her car and abandoned her in freezing weather, not 40 yards from the comfort and safety of her own home. Their goal? To make us leave. To intimidate us. They assumed I was just another aging veteran. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't retired at all. I was still an active-duty lieutenant colonel in the United States Army operating under classified directives specializing in extraction and counterterrorism. My name is Colonel Nathan Callahan, and this time, the battlefield was my own backyard. Our house in Briarwood Glen sat on 3 acres of land my father had purchased after returning from Vietnam. Paid in full. His only goal, to give my mother security for the rest of her life. For 15 years after his passing, she tended her garden and became the soul of our neighborhood, a retired teacher known for mentoring local kids, especially when it came to native plants and environmental conservation. I moved back home after a spinal injury forced a partial reassignment from field to strategy. My mother was beginning to suffer from vascular dementia, and though her mind still had bright moments, confusion was becoming more frequent. I wanted to be with her for every moment of clarity. Then came the developers. When Silva Pine Realty acquired the remaining properties around our land, everything changed. They quickly installed their own HOA hand-picked board led by Jessica Hartman, a 32-year-old former corporate attorney with a penchant for control. Their initiative, branded the Community Excellence Project, wasn't about unity. It was about removing the few original homeowners who weren't part of the HOA people like us. Jessica came to our door on a bright April morning with a clipboard and a rehearsed smile. "We're updating neighborhood standards," she said. "Your mother's garden is charming, but it doesn't align with our new aesthetic guidelines." I politely told her our property was grandfathered in. We weren't subject to HOA jurisdiction. Her smile didn't fade, but her eyes narrowed. "We'll see." What followed was a calculated campaign of harassment. First, we got letters, courtesy notices with vague accusations. Our garden was overgrown. Our trash bins were not in compliance. We had too many flags displayed. Then, landscapers appeared without warning, claiming they were authorized to correct the issues. They underestimated me. I didn't just write it off. I logged every incident, installed military-grade surveillance systems, and set up motion-triggered cameras across the property. I had secured more volatile environments overseas. They weren't going to scare us out. But then they escalated. That July, during a brutal heat wave, our water was mysteriously shut off. I called the utility company and learned the request had come from the HOA, falsely claiming emergency authority. Hours later, Jessica arrived with 2 HOA board members and bottles of water. "It might be time to consider a facility better suited to your mother's needs," she said. "We're fine," I replied evenly. "We have backup generators and a rainwater system." They were stunned we hadn't buckled. Next came legal threat certified letters alleging our property had been annexed into the HOA through obscure zoning loopholes. Legally baseless, of course. Just intimidation tactics. I recognized the Paterna psychological warfare strategy: stress the target, offer a way out, repeat until they surrender. I had trained soldiers to resist this. My mother, even in her haze, sensed the tension. One night she asked, "They want our land, don't they? Like they did the Nelsons?" The Nelsons, our neighbors across the street, had moved away quickly last year after repeated incidents. Their home was now a cluster of bland new condos. "They're not getting our land, Mom," I told her. I didn't add that I had already contacted a former intelligence officer turned investigator to start documenting a broader pattern. I couldn't avoid my next mandatory evaluation at Walter Reed. The shrapnel in my spine wasn't going to resolve itself. I prepped everything: daily check-ins by a trusted neighbor, labeled meals, secured meds, remote access to all security systems. While I was gone, Jessica made her move. Footage showed her bringing my mom tea while she tended her garden. 20 minutes later, my mother was visibly drugged. Jessica returned with 2 HOA board members, helped her into an SUV, and disabled our cameras. By the time I returned, the house was empty. Jessica had told my neighbor, a retired Marine named Ed Torres, that my mom had gone to Walter Reed to be with me. I knew that was false. I pulled up the last recorded footage. Jessica slipping something into the tea, her phone call immediately after, my mother's body going limp. I tapped into traffic camera systems and traced the SUV east to a rural highway. They stopped near a gas station. A traffic cam captured my mother stumbling out alone. That's where I found her 30 hours later, miles from home, dazed and cold. She'd been trying to remember my phone number the whole time. Ed and I coordinated a full sweep of surrounding counties. We utilized tools most civilians don't know exist. Facial recognition. Infrared satellite sweeps. I was hunting down the enemy, and this time it was personal. We eventually located her in the break room of another gas station, curled up beneath her cardigan. Her first words to me? "Did I do something wrong, Nathan?" The lady said I was a problem. My heart broke. Hospital tests confirmed it. Rohypnol. Deliberately administered. "Lieutenant Colonel Callahan," the ER doctor said, lowering her voice after reading my ID. "This wasn't accidental. This was premeditated." Mom came home with me the next day. I assigned a security team made up of local veterans. We preserved the teacup for lab analysis. As I helped Mom to bed, she looked at me and whispered, "You're going to go after them, aren't you?" "Not in the way they expect," I said. I made 3 calls. 1 to my commanding officer, General Martin Keegan. 1 to Special Agent Lily Rourke, an FBI investigator specializing in elder exploitation. And 1 to Commander Travis Duran, a JAG attorney with clearance for civilian-military crossover cases. Within 72 hours, we compiled a devastating report: surveillance footage, toxicology results, witness testimonies, HOA meeting minutes, and digital communications. We identified 5 other neighborhoods where Silverpine had used the same tactics. The evidence was enough for federal charges: elder abuse, kidnapping, unlawful administration of a controlled substance, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. At 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, the FBI executed coordinated raids. Jessica was arrested in her silk robe, her husband in pajama pants. 4 other board members were taken into custody. The local sheriff, whose son-in-law was on the HOA board, was removed under federal authority. News stations aired the story within hours. Federal sting exposes elder abuse ring in affluent neighborhood. They didn't mention me by name, but neighbors started connecting the dots. At the emergency town meeting, I stood and spoke not as Nathan Callahan the neighbor, but as Lieutenant Colonel Callahan. "This isn't just about my mother," I said. "It's about the veterans they thought were too old to fight back. It's about the families who quietly served this country and were then treated as disposable." The room erupted in applause. Senator Douglas Hastings, a former Navy officer who had been briefed on the case, stepped forward with a proposal: new federal legislation, the Callahan Act, designed to protect elderly veterans and their families from predatory development practices. Jessica and her co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years. Silverpine Realty faced over $30 million in fines. 2 state officials resigned in disgrace. And most importantly, my mother's garden remained untouched. The Callahan Act passed with bipartisan support. President Stanton signed it into law with my mother beside him in a rare moment of lucidity. "You always protected others, Nathan," she told me as she gripped my hand. "Just like your father. We still live on those 3 acres. The flag still flies. The garden still grows. And the neighborhood now watches out for one another like a real community should." They tried to scare us out, but instead, they awakened a soldier who had never truly stopped fighting. Some people don't carry guns. They carry records. They carry memories. They carry justice. They chose the wrong family, and they learned what others around the world already know. American veterans don't quit. We defend what matters most no matter where the battlefield is.